Very good morning to you all and a warm welcome to this edition of Views, People and News on KFM. My name is Judith Atim. I'm your host, and today we are talking about the state of democracy in East Africa. And I will be joined by three guests. Two are just around the corner, but I have already with me in the studio Dr. Sarah Birete, who is the Executive Director at the Center for Constitutional Governance. Good morning, Dr. Sarah Birete.
Good morning to you and the viewers out there.
When were you last here? Many months ago?
It's been a while, but I usually come to discuss civic space and governance issues.
Don't worry. We should be having you like monthly or so. But good to have you, Dr. Sarah. Of course, we shall start. Before we delve into our discussion, our topical discussion, let me take you through the highlights of the week as we also wait for your other two colleagues who I'll introduce as soon as they are here. Of course, you are all aware that on Tuesday, Parliament was quite a beehive of activities. They passed the Uganda People's Defence Forces Amendment Bill 2025, which will see civilians tried in the courts martial. The leader of opposition in Parliament, Joel Senyonyi, led the majority members on his side, and they walked out before the bill was passed. The bill is in response to the Supreme Court's decision of January 31st in the case of the Attorney General versus Honorable Michael Kabaziguruka. It was a constitutional appeal which found that the trial of civilians in military courts under the current UPDF Act was unconstitutional. The same parliamentary sitting also passed the Political Parties and Organizations Amendment Bill 2025, which had been tabled by NAPAC woman MP Faith Nakut. And the Special Presidential Advisor on Defense and Security, General Caleb Akandwa-Naho, commonly known as Salim Saleh, on Wednesday hosted a delegation of the European Union in Gulu, promising to deal with the Chief of Defense Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, over his social media threats, which many view as negatively affecting Uganda's international standing and bilateral relations. The EU delegation, led by Ambassador Jan Sadik, expressed concern over recent posts by General Muhoozi, in which he threatened to arrest, take them to his basement and see them deported for meeting leaders of the National Unity Platform at the party's headquarters last week. General Saleh acknowledged the gravity of the Commander-in-Chief's remarks, especially targeting opposition figures and foreign diplomats, and he offered to apologize on Muhoozi's behalf, expressing reservations on what he could post next. And on Sunday, leading Kenyan lawyer and the country's former Justice Minister Martha Karua was arrested upon arrival in Tanzania and deported to prevent her from attending a court case of opposition leader Tundu Lissu. Two of her colleagues were also reportedly detained and deported after flying in from neighboring Kenya. Former Kenyan Chief Justice Willy Mutunga and other prominent rights activists, including Kenya's Boniface Mwangi and Uganda's Agatha Atuhaire, who traveled there over to attend the court proceedings, were also stopped and held at the airport. Later, Agatha and Boniface were detained and tortured. Agatha was dumped at Mutukula border yesterday, and she was found with visible marks of torture. And on Friday, tempers flared at the Nakawa Magistrates Court in the proceedings of a treason case against opposition leader Dr. Kizza Besigye and his political ally Haj Obaid Lutale, when violence erupted in the courtroom and defense lawyers stormed out in protest over the prolonged pre-trial detention and absence of the lead counsel. Punches flew in the packed courtroom at Nakawa Chief Magistrates Court as opposition supporters clashed with unidentified muscular men believed to be undercover security operatives. The violence broke out after opposition member Ingrid Turinawa was seen filming the overbearing security presence in court. One of the plainclothes men reportedly grabbed her phone and began attacking people, and this sparked a physical altercation. And lastly, on Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump confronted his South African counterpart, Cyril Ramaphosa, with explosive false claims of white genocide and land seizures during a tense White House meeting that was reminiscent of his February ambush of Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky. In a carefully choreographed Oval Office onslaught, Trump pounced, moving quickly to a list of concerns about the treatment of white South Africans, which he punctuated by playing a video and leafing through a stack of printed news articles that he said proved his allegations. Ramaphosa had hoped to use the engagement to reset his country's relationship with the U.S. after Trump cancelled much-needed aid to South Africa, offered refuge to white minority Afrikaners, expelled the country's ambassador, and criticized its genocide court case against Israel. And those are just some of the biggest news stories that came through the week. And I'm pleased that my two other guests have just walked in. Professor Maurice Ogengana Tigo, seasoned politician, former member of the Pan-African Parliament. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
I know our stairs.
For your stairs, I'm going to send a bill for my health. But good morning, listeners of VPN, and good morning, my colleague Sarah, and my honorable colleague here was laughing at him while we were climbing the stairs.
I'm happy to see you, Professor.
Thank you.
Of course, I also have Honorable Opolot Simon Peter Kwalinga, Member of Parliament for Kanyum County in Komi District. Honorable, good morning.
Good morning, Judith, and good morning, listeners. Just apologies that we came a bit late.
No, we're just starting. I understand.
The road works. So I came up to here, then I had to turn back because the road was closed.
Yeah, it's quite an inconvenience, but we hope when the road works are done, we'll have smoother traffic. And I'm happy that it's been a long time since I had all of you on the show.
Yes.
It's been several months, but it's good you're here today again, Professor.
Well, I was on the show when you were not there.
Okay. The other time.
Yes,
okay.
maybe even twice.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I just very quickly, of course, I read some of the issues. I don't know if you, but you know them already.
Yeah,
you already know them. I don't even need to go through. So I'll just start by picking your thoughts very quickly. I think I'll start with you, Dr. Sarah, then I'll move this way all the way to Professor. Just very quickly pick one or two issues that you'd like to reflect on.
You've said globally it was a very active week. A very active week, but the showdown, the Trump's approach with his guests and in the media, because the Ramaphosa fiasco was next to that of Zelensky, especially when he has disagreements. The pictures, the videos, it's good that Ramaphosa stayed cool throughout that debacle, and I think he represented Africa well, given the circumstances. Coming back home, the passing of the UPDF bill, now awaiting the assent of the president, it would have been a very beautiful bill that Ugandans would be celebrating if only it did not include issues of civilians. The issues of welfare for the UPDF, especially those retired soldiers that were languishing in villages for long after serving their country with dignity, injured people without hope. It would have called for celebration. And I don't know why it took so long for the government to take care of the welfare details of the people that serve this country, that surrender their youth to serve this country. I don't know why it took us so long. So, but the issues regarding contempt of Supreme Court judgment, issues regarding executive overreach to exercise judicial power over civilians, it really creates a dampening mood to the bill that would be celebrating for the officers and men and women that volunteer to serve this country with dignity. Coming to the issue of the human rights defenders and the behavior of Tanzania, and I know we'll get into the detail of that, but briefly, Tanzania is a host of the East African Community headquarters. It's also a host of the East African Court of Justice. And even if East Africans had no reason to go to Tanzania, official reason, and you've just got a ticket and you think you should go to tour the headquarters, that is the headquarters of East Africans. It is not the headquarters of Tanzania. Going back to the principles of the treaty, going back to the Common Markets Protocol and the provisions for free movement of persons, it's really an embarrassment for Tanzania to behave the way they did.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. Yes, Honorable Simon Peter.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, where do I begin? If we look at globally, because we're discussing democracy, the origin that dates back to the 6th century BC in Athens, when the word democracy was coined, meaning the citizen, demos, and the kratos, the rule or the ruler, the power. Now, meaning there is a ruler and there are citizens. Now, the convergence is the interest. When America's interests are threatened, or the white population's interests are threatened, they will tend to evoke the ideals of democracy. That's why you see them trying to impose their will upon the South Africans and the rest of the world. When they have interests, say, of certain economic resources, they can engage with authoritarian regimes and autocrats, whether in Saudi Arabia, whether in Afghanistan. They can even sponsor the Taliban's. They don't care. But for them, that's their democracy. So when you come to East Africa, I should say, as sovereign states, from the time we got independence, that's the time when we should have defined the type of rule that we ought to govern us. Because democracy, to my grandmother in the village or to my mother in the village, will mean a provision of social services. Can she obtain drugs in a hospital? Is there good policies that can bring about money in our pocket? But to a philosopher or a professor, it mean self-rule, where people are elected and a few go to rule on behalf of the others. Now, based on that historical perspective and the different conceptualization of democracy to different persons and individuals, you will discover that the elite or the group that agitates for power and eventually gets power will always put in place rules, talk of laws that first cement their rulership and make them perpetual in leading the rest of society. Now, the UPDF bill which we just passed, I was there that day when it was being passed. The president briefed us before this a number of times, and we got to understand his points and the mission that the objectives that it tends to want to achieve. The issue emanates from the fact that some citizens or some sections of society want to imitate state power, want to apply and utilize the laxity of the state in some aspects to arrogate themselves as the state pursuing their own objectives, the objectives for which it is supposed to be pursued and guaranteed by the state. Things to do with the security, for example. You recently had already a scenario in Kenya where a citizen created his own police station and started running a police station, arresting and detaining. Now, in such a scenario, you also saw scenarios where within Uganda, individuals doing drills, military drills, and conducting themselves like this part of the state. I don't think anybody who is in power, who has been mandated to exercise power and authority in a given territory, will actually tolerate such a mentality. He cannot watch because he knows what I call the path dependency theory. The path through which an individual passes to come to power determines the behavior of that individual in that exercise of power. He knows that I started, for example, with 27. It starts like that, and eventually it becomes uncontrollable. Now, democratic as the individual is, he comes up with a law. Because if he was autocratic, he wouldn't bother to come up with a law. He would just send the military and arrest all those individuals who are trying to behave like the state. But President Museveni, in his democratic credentials that we see and we have perceived since, decides to say, let me come with a law. After all, they have representatives of 45 million Ugandans in parliament. This is what I want. I don't want a threat to my power. I want to come up with a law and rule with these laws as democracy dictates. So he comes up with a bill. It is up to the citizens' representatives to scrutinize the bill and pass what they believe is good for society. So they passed what they had to pass. We passed what we had to pass in the given circumstances to avoid anarchy, because we decided or accepted that NRA, UPDF, NRM governs us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to them to come up with the laws that they feel are good for democracy and for the governance of society. And I believe that is the basis for which this law was brought, to guarantee democracy.
Thank you very much, Honorable Belot. Let me move to you, Professor Latigo. Of course, I'm still not going to ask questions. I think the questions will come in later, but I've taken note of your submissions. So, Professor, we're still reflecting on the highlights of the week.
My brother made a submission which kind of helped the assertion which I was going to make. I've said it elsewhere that in our tradition, and my brother here knows very well, when you are marrying a girl, the in-laws will come and you'll show them the cows that you're going to send. They don't pick. You show them. When they see, they can reject some on account of their ill health, but they don't know the characters of those cows. But normally what happens is that the most stubborn ones, the ones that break the crown, the ones that have no milk, those are the ones you show and give to your in-laws. But because they are stubborn, on the day of taking the dowry, the cows will not go alone. So you move all the crowd up to the in-laws' place. Then they remove the ones that are for marriage, and then the rest of the cows come back.
So the cows escort the other cows.
Yes. So what you said is a very good aspect of the bill. Where cows merely escorting the cows for the marriage.
Okay.
The cow for the marriage is what our brother talked about. A law that will allow the president and the NRM to use the military in politics. It is not democracy. Because in the first instance, is there any law which stipulates how much salary teachers get? No. These are administrative processes. And the executive have absolute right to spell out how much a retired UPDF officer would get. And when they set it, they'll put it in the budget, they'll defend it in the budget, and it is passed, and it is policy, it will hold. But they brought that as a sweetener. And that is the thing that pains me about the politics of Uganda is cynicism. If you want to deal with those guys who you think threaten your power, deal with them openly so that we know that you are dealing with them. But when you cynically bring something good so that when we criticize the act, you'll say, you see, these people don't want you to benefit when you have served the country. That is what pains some of us very much. It's the wrong way of doing things. But that act, yes, like you said, it could have been sweet. It could also have been okay if the right procedures were followed. My brother here knows that laws such as that, Adolf will send out a notice for people to write, send written submission. You don't do that. In a democratic parliament, you go and make your presentation. During the LRA war, I made my presentation and gave a copy of my presentation for the answer. Here you give it 3 days, and then all of a sudden, bills the second reading.
They give 1 day.
Yeah, bills the second reading. And you can tell us, the report of the committee was never circulated. The report of the committee was not circulated. Even the ones that were read, I was told there were no signatures. Now, when you breach procedure, we knocked out the Anti-Homosexuality Act.
They didn't even have quorum, but we'll get to that.
Yes. So why do a democracy that doesn't respect its own rules is not a democracy? And we are saying that because you will be victims. Those who were in power and did stupid things like that, they paid. The people from the north paid. The people from West Nile paid. And I can assure you, those who are messing now, they will pay. And we don't want to be in this locked cycle of small progress, then deep decline with with pain to everybody, with hatred everywhere. What for? Can the president call these people and sit them down? Call the other parties and call elders like us and say, look, this is what these people are doing. They are jeopardizing democracy. Talk to them. If we took that step, wouldn't Uganda be much better than that? So we will discuss this further. On Trump, Trump, me and Sarah, we are on some WhatsApp fora, two of them. And we have some guys who were passionate believers in Trump. And we said, a criminal can never be a good leader. A liar can never be a good leader. But for them, unfortunately, the world, maybe because of this IT thing, engagement in knowledge and technology has diminished. Society has become far more idle, and therefore the people believe anything.
There's no critical thinking.
No. So they believed in Trump. The thing that he did with Ramaphosa is probably okay. But you go to bury the Pope, you are told that the order, the formalities that you wear a black suit. Everybody else goes with black suit except Trump. Trump wore a blue suit. And then when they're praying, Trump is on
On the phone.
On the phone. That is the president of the world's biggest and most powerful country. When things reach that level, what you see in the smaller countries are merely consequences. Because if Trump can do it, why not me? And sadly, Sarah pointed out the facts about Tanzania. I heard one thing. It was the first country in East Africa to be independent. In other words, Tanzania is our elder. It ought to be showing good examples. Ask yourself what happened. Under Magufuli, it was not human rights defenders fearing to go to Tanzania because they would be arrested. They were criminals. You steal money, Magufuli will fix you there and then. You are given an assignment and the outcome is inadequate, you pay the price. And under Magufuli, nobody talked about. Yeah, there were difficulties within their party. I have friends that who were in the Pan-African Parliament with, and there are difficulties. But in general, Tanzania benefited, East Africa benefited because it became the benchmark. So now when we talk about how you can develop your country, you will talk about go to Tanzania, go to Rwanda, go to Kenya. My brother, nobody says go to Uganda. And we have the best, we are the most endowed country in East Africa. We have some of the most intelligent, brilliant people in East Africa. But go and find out if anybody says go to Uganda if you want to see how governance and development can be.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your submissions. We'll be back after the break, but just before we go into the break, we've just learned that Honorable Godfrey Chiwanda has been involved in a nasty accident along Mitiana Road, but he has been rushed to Nakasero Hospital, so we're following this story. So we'll be back after the break. Welcome back from the break. Glad you're still with us here on KFM. This is Views People and News VPN, and now we delve into our topic, the state of democracy in East Africa, but also the conversations that we've had in the last 30 minutes or so. Many of them actually tie into the conversations that we're already having. So we know that East Africa, the whole region, is in turmoil. But Sarah, I would like to start with you to just give us a preamble of the state, I mean, looking at all these reports that we have, whether it's on the state of civic space, on the state of democracy, and so just give us a preamble to just set the tone so that we understand, we get a good picture of where the region
what
is.
Are we dealing with?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I will quickly use 3 reports, international reports, but also live examples of what's happening in the East African region. One is the Mo Ibrahim Governance Index. In summary, it scores Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda as countries struggling with the governance, with warning signs and potential areas of concern. And among the potential areas of concern is the rule of law and status of civil and political liberties. You have challenges with the transparency and accountability, the corruption issues in the countries. You have challenges with the general aspect of liberties in Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda. On the other hand, the rule of law index scores Rwanda positively. Yes. Yeah, so Rwanda is the first country in sub-Saharan Africa in that global rule of law index by the World Justice Forum. And Uganda stands at, out of 142 countries scored, Uganda is 125, but number 28 in sub-Saharan Africa. Kenya global is 101, but number 20. And Tanzania is 96 globally and number 11 in sub-Saharan Africa. So you have Rwanda, which is 41 globally and the first in sub-Saharan Africa, scoring very well. When you go under the World Civicus Monitor, that now goes into the detail of the civic space context, how are citizens participating in their governance, how are the rights of the political minority handled, the state of multi-party politics, is there a level playing field. You have Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and Rwanda all marked regressed, meaning that the civic space there is closing, and in some aspects closed, not just closing. So when you come back near home, what is happening? Live examples away from the reports that are really well researched and with good details, and I want to invite citizens to read these reports. They are for just 2024. When you go to Uganda, Dr. Kizza Besigye was rushly brought to court yesterday in a production warrant that was given in the night, properly written, and the lawyers were wondering, a case that had been adjourned the previous day, what was this ambush about? In law, you don't ambush lawyers. That's why even in exams, they do open book exams. Law is not handled by surprise attack like gorilla or things. No. So it's good that the lawyers walked out. But also the most important thing is that Dr. Kizza Besigye and the Hajabed Rutare are facing treason charges after abduction in Nairobi. You have a situation in Tanzania where also the leading opposition party and chairman of Chadema facing treason charges. And there was even a struggle to have a physical presence in court. And that's why people had gone to observe, the East African Solidarity had gone to observe to see whether really Tundu will be physically present in court, because the state had denied him that right. It had to take an application and a court decision to have a physical appearance. When you go to South Sudan, you have a situation where Riek Machar, who is a principal to the Comprehensive Peace Agreement and the first vice president, in house arrest for now 4 months or more, together with his wife, who is a minister of energy, and there is a stalemate after 4 times of postponing elections in South Sudan. It's important to note that the only elections that have happened in South Sudan was a referendum for secession from the big Sudan. And the Comprehensive Peace Agreement had given the interim government 4 years. But in those 4 years, there were clear terms of reference. What work was supposed to be done by the transitional government? Conduct census, make a new constitution, register political parties, unify the army, and create electoral laws and a credible electoral register so that you hold elections for the people of South Sudan to choose who should govern them. This time had been given 4 years. It's now 11 years. There's nothing being done on the things that the interim government was supposed to have done. And Salva Kiir is carrying on with a contested legitimacy and, of course, elements of civil skirmishes after, the uncomfort in society. The last time I was in South Sudan in November last year, the army was staging roadblocks to collect money from people because they had spent 11 months without pay. Very poor service delivery. When you go to Kenya, which still stands out as a giant amongst pygmies, because it still remains the best democratic country in East Africa, with its own set of challenges arising from the abductions that include foreigners, nationals from Turkey, Ugandans, and others that have been abducted in Kenya, which was, nicknamed the capital state for abductions in Africa. You have the Ruto government struggling, but also with the very strong alliances with the NRM here. And Ruto wants to be like the Siamese twin of NRM bad elements in Kenya. But I don't know whether he will get away with it in Kenya because the young people are up in arms against him. So you have a situation of 2 deputy presidents after the court decision ruling that Rigathi Gachagua is still a deputy president, but you also have Professor Kindiki as a deputy president, and you have that contested legitimacy until the courts resolve. You have that fallout of the coalition that came to power, and I think now they are about 5 contenders for the presidency. So it's an interesting country to watch, especially given that they have entrenched civil and political liberties that check the dictatorship and has really checked and restrained the Ruto in many aspects. So if you look at these elements coming from the region, of course now the crisis in Tanzania, I saw a clip by former President Uhuru Kenyatta saying you should either be in the East African integration or out. They cannot have Tanzanians freely doing about their business in Kenya and other countries, and then for you are chasing Kenyans from the airport. So he was calling out to Mama Samia to choose where she wants to be. Either she's in or out, but not those double standards. And if Tanzania, because we are trying online petitions to say Tanzania should set free the headquarters of East Africa, if that's how they want to behave, let the headquarters shift to a stable and accessible country for the East African people.
Wow, thank you. That's loaded. Honorable, what is your reading of everything that is happening from South Sudan to Uganda to Tanzania to Rwanda to Kenya, even the DRC? What is your reading of the state of affairs in the region, and what does this mean for democracy?
For me, as Opolot, the guardian of the people, I believe that this is a struggle. What all these countries are trying to is a struggle for good governance and democracy. First, why is it a struggle? It's a struggle because they adopted a system of governance that is not reminiscent or that is not in conformity with their cultural aspirations and values. The cultural aspects of society tend to determine the behavioral aspects in the governance system. We rushed to say we want a democracy. Remember, democracy cannot be separated with the economic aspects of it, that's capitalism, because it goes hand in hand. And that's why earlier on I told you, to my mother in the village, she will look at democracy as a distribution of goods and services. Her ability or easy access to goods and services will make her praise and believe that there is democracy. If she is stifled to access those goods and services that are basic for her development and survival in society, she will definitely complain that it appears there is no democracy today in society. So when you look at, and by the way, that is what makes it very difficult now for us to unify democratically in EAC. We shall struggle, but it might not be easy to unify democratically. And I don't see any strong union of states in the world historically that unified democratically. It tends to pass through a path of a bit of violence. For example, for you to progress, there is always a rift. There is a reaction of friction. Friction has to take place. Even for us to walk here, to drive here, friction has to take place. The struggle between the road and the tires. And that's what progress has to come here. So even in governance, for us to reach what we want, we need to redefine the kind of democracy that we believe best fits and suits our society. If we just move on, like you say, French, the Belgians, for example, at what state did they leave the Congo? DRC. They left them at the state of anarchy. But you see them having regular elections today. And yet the citizens, some of the citizens are not even aware of who's in Kinshasa, by the way, in some parts of DRC. So there is a struggle of minority rights, for example. How does democracy that we are pursuing, Professor here and Dr. Sarah, are pursuing, the would-be democracy they feel is best suited for society, how does it take care of minority rights, for example? Because I have my talent, the talent that is best suited to pursue a given task, to accomplish a given task. But I've been, the majority of maybe thugs can come up and they are the majority, or criminals are the majority. They will vote you out. Yet you'd have been the best person. So I see democracy based on an individual attribute. So Somalia is in turmoil, you know it. Uganda is the one struggling to stabilize that part of the world. Kenya, as Dr. Saras rightly put it, is struggling, but it was supposed to be the pygmies, according to her. The pygmies of what? Democracy.
The giant amongst
pygmies are here. But I remember when I was in Germany in 2009, 2010 to 11, I one of our professors, a political scientist, Professor Hartman, got a sabbatical leave and said he was coming. When he came back, he said he had been part of the constitutional drafting of the Kenyan constitution. And he was saying this is the best constitution we have had in the whole world. We have got a very serious hybrid of a constitution. I said inside me, I'm like, let's wait and see the practicality. Because these people were trying to put us in a test tube to test, can this work in this country called Kenya? But I've seen that it has not worked. We need to redefine the kind of democratic persuasion that we need to move forward with. If you look at the peace agreements that they have attempted to make in South Sudan, so many. But because these are things that first sponsored by who? Sponsored by foreigners.
The agreement?
Yes. Those meetings didn't take place because we put in resources. It is foreigners that put in resources to facilitate those agreements, those meetings. There's no meeting of EAC that sits without a foreigner inside it. I've been attending most of them. From the time I was in the Ministry of Defense and in Internal Affairs, I participated and saw foreigners will always be seated there. And you ask those our donors. Simple meetings. Mm-hmm. So, now, in the report that Sarah read, it puts Rwanda as better off than Uganda.
Rule of law and development.
Yeah, that's democracy, part of democracy. Mm. Yeah, rule of law and development is actually one of the attributes of democracy in a given society. Because what is democracy without development? And what's democracy without the rule of law?
So in your opinion, what makes Rwanda this success story that Uganda is not after 40 years under the NRM?
I haven't concluded that Rwanda is better than us. Mm-hmm. To me, I believe we are better than Rwanda in many aspects.
Tell us a few.
For example, how many people go to the ballot in Uganda? How many regular elections have we had?
And Rwanda doesn't have?
Rwanda has, but we have had more.
Of course, anyway.
You get me?
It's okay, Professor.
Yeah, I don't want to rate another country better than my country. That cannot be, because I am part of this governance.
But I think it's also, don't you think it's also fair that where you are not doing well as a country, no matter how much you love your country, you should also be concerned that you're not actually doing well in those areas, and think of ways of improving.
Actually, the biggest area.
Do you know how many Rwandese refugees we have in Uganda?
But how many Rwanda?
And how many Ugandan refugees are in Rwanda?
If you mean how many Rwanda?
Let us go one by one, because you cannot say my neighbor's home is better than my home, and yet the children of my neighbor, lunchtime they are ever in my house. Having lunch. You get me? They run here, they have been attacked and they run here for security. And you say the neighbor is better than me? How can that be? It cannot be. Actually, Rwanda cannot survive without Uganda. Let me tell you this today, for your own information. These are mutual brothers cooperating for the peace and security of this region, let alone development of the region. So, based on the background that Rwanda has passed through its governance and its democratization process, we can't say now that, they are top. Uganda is pursuing the same democratic path, and I believe in Uganda, first of all, this kind of training that we are having in parties private parties going creating armies. Can it take place in Rwanda?
It's okay.
In Rwanda, recently, you see, this woman comes here, Martha Karuya. She comes here, she's given a certificate to practice here. What happened when she went to Tanzania? What happened?
Let me come to.
No, but there's something again.
Okay.
Professor had said that not many people can come to Uganda for development, to study development. There are many.
No, I didn't talk about study.
Yeah.
I said like they said, if you want to see how beautiful the roads are, you go to Tanzania. I said, what do they bring us to? Apart from, don't talk about our national parks because NRM didn't create it. Tell us.
Uganda attracts a number of citizens globally to come and learn from its systems every day. Every day, including our own parliament here. There's no week that passes without some countries coming in there.
And they learn what?
They know what they are learning.
You see,
for example, our decentralization system, our LOC system is unique in the whole world.
Oh my God.
This is a unique aspect of democracy. Our women emancipation. Those are unique. The issue of special interest groups representation in parliament and in a democracy. These are very unique. They are not in America. They are not in Britain. They are even not common in anywhere in Africa. It's unique to Uganda. And this is what we talk about governance, whereby justice can be administered at the lowest levels. You can appeal from the lowest up to the top.
Thank you, Honorable. Let me come to you, Professor. But also one interesting, I know you have a lot of questions, of course, in your mind, I can already see, regarding his submission. But also his argument is that democracy is struggling in the region largely because it's a Western import. And that different people have different interpretations of democracy. And I would also like us to draw the linkage between service delivery and good governance, focusing specifically on our situation in Uganda. Of course, you're free to also make comparisons elsewhere, but it's very...
You see, when we are on a program like this, we're not in an academic environment. Neither are we in a campaign environment. We want to talk things that honestly helps this country. And I want to tell my honorable brother that when some of us talk the way we talk, we don't hate President Museveni, we don't hate the NRM. We actually want President Museveni and the NRM to succeed. Because when they succeed, we are all successful. But if they cannot listen, and I keep quiet, when my day comes, and God asked me that, Latigo, I gave you all the brains, what did you do with it? It will only be me alone to answer to God. That is what motivates me. I'm not interested in anything else. Other than that, the potential that Uganda has translates into the success that some of us saw. You are a young man. I come from Kalonga. In fact, let me use this opportunity to thank the people of Agago. The NRM elections yesterday, they elected a district chair. The young man who studied in Laibi, he is highly qualified. He linked up with Americans. He has an NGO. He has done things for the people. And that's what I had been wanting. We had an this is Walter Oketa. He has businesses. And yesterday when he won, I was extremely happy. Because then for once, the NRM will have the kind of leadership that will allow the capacity of people like Latigo to be tapped to help transform this country. But when you have illiterates, sycophants being elected, and you expect that they will lead the country when they don't know where they are going, it is not possible. My brother here talks about Rwanda. I was a regular in Rwanda when I was even when I was leader of opposition, my last trip as leader of opposition in East Africa, I went up to Rwanda with my team. But I went to Pan-African Parliament, we had meetings in Rwanda. And the last Pan-African Parliament meeting we had in Rwanda, when we toured the place equivalent to Buganda Park, everybody from all over Africa were shocked. You don't see bottle tops, rubbish thrown. Then I said, why? I said, you know, here, if you throw it down, the citizens will arrest you. Because Kagame inculcated in the people of Rwanda that it is the duty of everybody to make the country work. You go to the main street of Rwanda, it starts from Luzira, goes through Kampala here, up to Kawempe. That is the main street. The hotels that we never see them here, the Western hotels, they're all in Rwanda. It's not by accident. It's because they know that when they take their businesses there, the conditions will allow their businesses to flourish. Too many of the people who come here, they're thugs. They collude with the people in government, they sign contracts, the guys take their share, and the contractor can't complete the work.
Pinette, the hospital.
And we say we are okay. When I was a young kid, there were two taxis, one from Bale, driven by an Indian, Ghulam Hussein. Another one from Soroti, driven by Yusuf. They would be in Kalongo 10 o'clock in the morning. And 10 o'clock in the morning, in Kalongo, you'll get Uganda gas, published in Kampala. 10 o'clock. Our neighbor was an Arab, it was a supermarket in Kalongo. You could go and buy dates, you buy wine. 1960s, my brother. We go to Samuel Baker. If they cooked beans twice, what we used to do was we would just pick these green flies and go and drop it in the food, and you raise your hand and say, oh, there's a fly in the food. They ring the bell and you stop eating. Then they'll call Amlani and bring beef and bread. And we are there enjoying. My school, Samuel Baker, had more than $500,000 in its foreign account. Now, go to Makerere and you'll be shocked. Go to schools in the villages. I don't know how you guys are doing. Maybe you are doing well. That's why you seem to be happy about what is happening.
No, I do.
But my first statement, I talked about a Tonu, and the first lady was in parliament then. I said I want a primary school where the Tonus would come from the village and also come and become prominent people here. It is not happening anymore. All the schools in Agago, how many of them bring students to big schools in Kampala? Virtually none. If they were to bring them, a child who is very brilliant passes, the parents will not afford the fees. Now, and you call that you are developing the country? But when you guys meet President Museveni, you are given 100 million.
They say they are poor, yet they are the best paid.
And you can't feel about it? Really? Is this your country? I ask the people in power now, is this your country? Because if it were your country, you will not treat it like this. We talk passionately because we love Uganda and we love our people. And for me, I will continue to talk. I will not shy away from demanding that the best comes out of my country. If you are in leadership, it is your responsibility to deliver those things that will shut down Latigo. Because when the roads are good, what will Latigo criticize? When the schools are working, what will Latigo criticize? When businesses, there's equity in business, Why would people even begin to operate like soldiers in parties? Let me tell you, put your law there. And I said it the other day. At the end, many of you will run along these streets and get burnt the way Acholi is. We are burnt when national resistance movement people took power.
Thank you very much, Professor. It's time for us to take a break, and then we will be back and continue with this discussion. Welcome back from the break. It is 12 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is VPN, and we continue with our discussion on the state of democracy in East Africa. Sarah, I'm coming to you now. Honorable Opolot, still on the issue of democracy, why there are contestations within the region. In his opinion, it's a foreign import, and that's why it is struggling to take root. What do you think about that?
Let's make the Kabaka the president. If they wanted, they want to move away from global democracy. Why are we in the UN? Why are we members in all this global
African
order?
Union.
The East African community. You know that is when people want ways of justifying authoritarianism. They end up blaming democracy. Even if you went to our traditional ways of how were we governing ourselves, let's go to the kingdom structures. They had the council, which is a replica of parliament. They had representatives in that council. They had the separation of powers. They had the court. They had, even in other centers, they had the elders council. So what is different? Even our traditional setups had the three arms of governance. These representatives in the council were elective or endorsed.
And collective responsibility.
Yes, and they had collective responsibility, and they would answer to the people they represent in that council. So what is different? Just a name, that this time it's an English name, it's quantified. That is really hypocrisy of the highest order. But I want to come to the issues raised by Honorable. One, he was questioning the rule of law index. The rule of law index is not saying Rwanda is perfect, or any other country for that matter, because I think the highest score was about 93%. So, but what are the ingredients, or what are the parameters? What is this report interrogating? First principle is constraints on government and ability to sanction officers of government on abuse of power. Do we have that in Uganda? Do we? Look at the conduct of the CDF and how parliament runs instead of exercising their constitutional mandate. If you want them to run out of parliament, mention the conduct of the CDF. Everybody, including presiding officer, will feel like jumping for their life. So when you come to absence of corruption is the second ingredient. Do you think really Uganda can compete with Rwanda? Look at all of the reports of parliament that have gathered dust. When you look at the other ingredient is open government. I was attending the open government partnership globally. Uganda is blacklisted. Rwanda is a member. So what are you talking about? When you look at the order and security, when the professor was submitting, I remember the order in Boda in Rwanda. Oh my God. Like really? And you want to compare with this mess? Kampala, even when you reach your destination, you are like, we drive by crisis.
You are a minister, you breach traffic law, you will be arrested. Here, you find ramshackle ministers, they have lead vehicles. Really?
So when you talk about, Honorable, that how can you talk badly of your country? You think we don't have Uganda? You think we don't have countries where we can seek residence and be? But you cannot bastardize standard reports because and I love my country. Everybody loves Uganda. By the way, the people who want Uganda to do better love Uganda more than sycophants.
Yeah. For them, they love the people who have given them the opportunity to enjoy.
Then briefly, I want to talk about the issue of foreign funding. The South Sudan process was foreign funded. DS is foreign funded. In Uganda, Parliament has just passed a budget. At most, Uganda can collect 38 trillion. Everybody knows. But they budget for 72 trillion. Last year, this year. So where do they get the balance? Even MP's salaries are foreign funded. This talk of foreign funding as if it's the evil. When these countries are messing up their national resources, when these countries have failed to develop their resources, I wish a president would come and say, I don't want any foreign funding. Like in West Africa, the president have said, I've closed borders. Let's deal with ourselves. I wish they could do that. Then they would have, legitimacy and moral authority to condemn foreign funding. Their own salaries, all these government officials is foreign funded. What are they talking about? This bastardization.
Which project is funded with the local fund?
But the local funds are half the budget, meaning that even the president is foreign funded. Make a budget that is limited to 38 trillion, then start lecturing people on foreign funding.
Thank you. Let's get back to you, Honorable. I think you have you've heard from your two colleagues, and I'm sure you want to respond. But still, the issue of foreign funding. When you say in the region, no meeting takes place at the EAC level without foreign funding. Isn't this an indictment that, as a region, our governments are actually failing to even do the most basic of raising funds to hold meetings which are crucial to their citizens and for their own governance and administration?
Well, before that, let's first correct one thing, that Uganda, our salaries and budget is foreign funding. Obtaining a loan is not to say that's foreign funding, because that loan is going to be paid by the citizens of Uganda, by the resources that are obtainable within Uganda. So it is Ugandan money. It is only that at the moment you have not yet extracted these resources, but there is someone who's able to give you money first in advance. Get me? Because we are going to be paying it back. It is our money to be paying back. So
obtaining a grant?
Not a grant. We are talking about, but there's no grant that pays any salary in Uganda. No single grant. That's a lie. So, if you say that it's an indictment, well, it is for all of us, the citizens of these countries, because we are supposed to have the ability to tame and harness nature for our own advantage and development. We need to be able to extract resources, natural resources, turn them into finances, and the ability to deploy talent in the right area, human resources, so that we are able to run our own affairs without any interference. But I can tell you who benefits more with foreign funding. It is those very people who give the money, who give the aid. They are the ones who benefit more, because without it, they will not be able to question your affairs. They will have no legitimacy to question the affairs of a given country if they don't give you funding. So they need it. They need you to receive that funding more than you need it. They will always come to you to impose the funding upon you.
But you have the option of refusing.
You have the option of refusing if you know that your citizens are already well off. But if you know that your child does not have enough clothing, for example, your child doesn't have enough food, you will be tempted to get it. Get me? Now, when we talk of, Dr. Sarah talked about that, why then are we members of UN and that kind of thing. But China is a member of UN. but they are not practicing the Western democracy. Get me? They are being directed the pathways of meritocracy that they are pursuing in their governance. Get me? And they give us also, get loans from China, but they never dictate terms that the West tends to dictate upon us. So what I'm trying to encourage society is that do not blame, say, MPs. MPs are elected by the citizens of Uganda. By the time they...
To represent the interests of these very citizens. So what happens when the citizens who've elected...
That's the fallacy of democracy. That is the fallacy of democracy. We imagine that, for example, if your constituency has got 100,000 people, now they have elected you. Now all the views of the 100 are going to be inside you. And so you will be talking about it. That is it. It is a fallacy.
But Honorable, when you were passing the Anti-Homosexuality Act, I think the central argument that all of you raised was that we speak on behalf of our people, and this is what our people want. So what is the contradiction then? Why is it so hard to address other issues that your people also want? People want good service delivery. People are against corruption. People want to participate and actively engage in their political and civic affairs.
A good example, Madam Atim. Anti-Homosexuality Act now is looking at the cultural aspirations of this society.
Corruption, a corrupt free society is also a cultural aspiration.
That.
Yes.
Is looking at that, you get me, across board, without even religion coming in, without even democracy. Homosexuality was never practiced in any society here.
That is a lie.
So, it was therefore...
that is a lie.
It was therefore easy to pass that law unanimously because of our culture. But again, who are the people who are most affected? The West. Do you know that we lost funding because of that law? Because they were trying to impose it upon us.
But the UPDF Act, the UPDF Act which you just passed, the amendments a few days ago. The trial of civilians is equally an issue that affects your voters. But why didn't you put up a spirited fight and speak in unison like you did during the passing of the Anti-Homosexuality Act when you were passing this particular bill?
Who is a civilian? Somebody who's armed.
Citizens.
Someone armed with a gun is a civilian, to your understanding. How do you define an armed man?
But that's not the only thing.
That's
not the only thing that section talks about.
Exactly,
that's
because you are saying trial of civilians. I don't know why you are talking about trial of civilians. In fact, it should be trial of armed persons, militants, people who have voluntarily adopted ways and behaviors as military persons.
Karamojan cattle rustlers?
Part of it, they are warriors. They are called Karamojong warriors. They are actually warriors, for your own information, because they are my relatives.
No.
They are warriors.
They are rustlers. They are not warriors.
Those are warriors, if you don't know. I have told we have society.
My friend,
Professor,
Professor,
you are not a professor of culture.
No.
You have a specialty. Okay. And you know your specialty. I don't want to remind you on that. So when I'm talking about
insects,
when I'm talking about Karamoja, I'm talking from a cultural point of view. They are by blood. So you get me? We know why they call them.
It's okay, Professor. I'll give you
We know how our society is divided. Do you know that there is a process called the Sapan in Karamoja Moteso culture?
What is
That
it?
is when warriors are trained. You heard recently when some general went and destroyed some cultural site in Katakwi. You must have heard in Teso.
So, but
That was the area where they trained.
please,
Yes.
yeah,
You get it.
you'll come back.
So
But do you think, Honorable, that a military solution would actually address a social problem in Karamoja? Because that's a social
that is
issue.
not a social issue. That's a military question. That is why all succeeding governments failed, because they were looking at it from a social point of view other than from a military point of view. An armed person is a militant. That is not a civilian. That one ceased to be a civilian a long time ago. You get me? It's like these people who trained as martial arts. You get it? Taekwondo, karate, and all that. And then you meet that guy and you treat him normally, like a normal citizen. That is a dangerous guy who can kill with his own hands.
But Taekwondo is a very disciplined sport.
I am telling you, but I am trying to give you. So when you meet also someone who has voluntarily acquired a firearm illegally, remember it is illegally, not legally. Illegally, that one knows the repercussions of it. It's like when the NRA went with the arms to the bush. They knew the repercussion. There was a law at the time that forbade such rebellion. So even today, these are the laws that were put in place to prevent and outlaw individuals or groups acquiring military gear, either for purposes of intimidation or otherwise.
Okay.
They should be dealt with according to the law. And that's the democracy that we want.
So, Sarah, I'll come to you. I wanted to raise this with Professor, but as we wait for him, I think I know you want to definitely respond to some of the things that that his Honorable Pulot has shared. But also, I want us to look at the role of regional bodies in addressing the challenges that we face in the region, the governance question. The role of, Professor is back, the role of regional bodies, EAC, IALA, the Pan-African Parliament, which, of course, Professor was a member formerly, IGAD, AU, all these bodies, where are they when it comes to addressing or resolving these contestations that we are seeing in the region? Professor, I think I wanted us to discuss briefly the role of these regional bodies.
You see, the problem with our regional bodies is that too many of them are pushed with the wrong objectives. Too many of them are pushed because the leaders in power want to do certain things and they need a framework for doing it. It makes it very difficult. The East African community that we got at independence was not about politics, because we had East African Railways, East African Airways, East African Post and Telecommunication, East African Research Organization. It was about governing East Africa holistically. Where we have reached now, there's so much divergence between countries that the only forum that we can use is a forum to ensure that there's peace in the region, there's peace in Africa. But it leaves upon each country the responsibility to govern itself, to develop itself. And this is the primary point. Every election, the president talks of, I'm going to fight for East African integration, while home is disintegrated. The few people are sucking away resources, others are looking on. You think they will smile at you and thank you for what you have done? They'll come for you. That's the problem. But when they go for the thieves, I will also be a victim. That is why I don't want that to happen. Because chaos has no boundaries. For Uganda, if I were to take power today, I would even withdraw from the East African community and focus on developing my country, but cooperating with people on equal terms, because Kenyans cannot shut us out. They will not be able to feed themselves. We have to feed them. So it has to be on a mutual basis. If you go to Nwaya now, you'll find all the hundreds of Kenyans are farmers in Nwaya in Acholi. Because there's no more land in Kenya. The population keeps growing. Urbanization is swallowing land. And they need to eat and live. Now, a strategic government in Uganda would have transformed Ugandan agriculture and would make huge money from agriculture, which money would be earned from the most basic element of the country. In other words, it will be prosperity which is built on rural prosperity. Now, how many boys do you meet on borders? You think border is paying? No. Because in the village, there's
People
nothing.
sell land to buy border.
And it is very tragic. And I appeal to my colleague, Honorable Opolot. Please, what is happening in this country is not okay. It is you people who are part of the government, whose party are in power, to tell yourselves and to tell your leader that, Mr. President, things are not okay in villages. Let us do things that will change the situation. And by the way, because you said something like you are not a professor of this, I can tell you.
But you are a senior citizen.
About Karamoja.
No one can be a professor. It's not easy to be a professor. None of us in this room is. Yes, Professor.
Let me just inform the country. The narrow strategic 5-year strategic plan, 2025 to 2035. I'm the one who worked on it. The agricultural finance yearbook, I'm the one who worked on it. Review of PRDP, I'm the one who worked on them. The new program for Northern Uganda, I'm the one who worked on them. I'm opposition. They like to say that, opposition. I don't know what it means, but I'm a Latigo who doesn't belong to NRM. That doesn't make me opposition. I'm still Latigo who doesn't belong to NRM.
That you're Ugandan.
But I'm a Ugandan who puts my country first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that means Uganda is really democratic to be able to
No,
pick
it's
you
not about
and
democracy.
he gave you to do that work.
No, not giving me. You
He was qualified.
I was not given.
He
I
was
looked for
competent,
to do
yes.
it.
Exactly, you were given.
No.
Are you the only
Why don't they
professor
just
in
give anyone? Why didn't they just give any random Ugandan those
No,
things?
they-
No, I think for
he was
purposes of
not doing it
fairness,
alone.
honorable,
This
I
is-
think
remember, he's a consultant.
we need to be civil and
He's a
respectful on the
consultant.
show. We need to be
Please,
civil and
please.
respectful.
You
With all
see,
due respect,
public service.
in this room, Professor is the most qualified in terms of his academic credentials, his political credentials, his service to this country. It's not something that we should be blinded to.
Public service has been vulgarized as an appendage of NRM, as if it's a gift to give a qualified person. What
Because it
kind
does-
of thing is that?
doesn't
There
belong
was
to you.
public service here before NRM.
So, Professor, you wanted to say something about the Karamoja question. I just want you to comment on that very quickly before we move to Sarah.
You see, when I was leader of opposition, in one of my statements in reply to the president, and that year there was serious anger in Karamoja. And then the Karamojans would tell us that it rains here, and the water of our rain goes to Tesu and goes to Acholi, so we are following our water. And in one of the statements, I told the government, I said, look, Australia is even far more dry than Karamoja. But what they do, when the season comes, they spread pasture seeds by air. Karamoja is a small place. If when the season is coming, you spread pasture seeds and you do proper dams, the Karamojongs will have no reason absolutely for moving. And secondly, do the roads between Karamoja and Acholi and Teso and Lamu. So that with those road networks, there is constant movement of people and there's quick response by security. And when cattle raiding and cattle theft becomes too risky, that will die. But you have to concentrate on the things that will transform the Karamojong from being what they were to being part of the new Uganda. That none of us were like this. We never lived in towns like this. So this is the progress that everybody must enjoy. I think recently there was even something about Karamoja in the papers and even in the social media. And the guys were really talking about how a dam was supposed to have been created and the money is eaten. Please.
Thank you, Professor. I think we will take calls at some point. But Sarah, let me just come to you very quickly, and I go to just in a few minutes, and then we'll probably open our phone lines. I think at around 10:45. Sarah,
You know the issues that we are discussing. The bad when governance collapses or fails. Recently, I put up a post which became, of course, problematic for NRM sycophants. The old NRM that used to be progressive had free thinkers, had, people that would think for the country.
And they would speak.
Yes, and they would speak their mind. And so that is the NRM that was popular.
Yes.
But this authoritarian NRM of sycophants, of patronage, of now even the pillars of the state, like public service, they think it is a regime thing. The public service was here before NRM. The regime doesn't know where it stops. And the boundaries of public service and the boundaries of civic participation of citizens, free participation in the development of the nation. They think it is a favor, they think it is a gift. No. But when you look at, because we've lost the core, so I put up a comparison poster on, of course, Lincoln Yu and our own visionary President Museveni. Lincoln Yu ruled Singapore for 35 years. From the violent breakaway from Malaysia with nothing, no natural resources, nothing, and they had to think. And Malaysia was celebrating, thinking they had, yes, that they were beg to come back. But they thought, and based on the 4 principles of meritocracy, core social services, which they call the social harmony, proper investment climate, they were able. So that story of from third world to first world in 35 years. So I compared with the President Museveni 40 years. So I said Lincoln was able to develop from nothing in 35 years and handed over a first world country. So I said the President Museveni, after 40 years in power, is running in the villages inspecting goats and pigs and the others. So I said, where is this going? And of course, if you are not a free thinker, then you would be alarmed. But this is the reality. 40 years non-stop. You have achieved what you can. But there are things that have failed. There is also things you've missed. But we are not saying that fine, but can we recollect and redirect the country with free thinkers? No.
So, Honorable, you just respond very quickly, and then we open the phone lines and just get some.
No, what I want us to also, as we discuss issues of governance, to notice that those in the ruling party are not necessarily sycophants. Yes, we may not rule out that there are a few sycophants somewhere. I don't know how you define a sycophant. But some of us are here objectively. We have been to school and know what is good for the country. If we didn't know, then we wouldn't have been elected by the majority of our constituents. So we should not label people who are defending the status quo and who are also appreciating the kind of development and progress that we have had so far. Because you need to look at the historical aspects of Uganda. And then you will appreciate that really we have come from far to reach where we have reached today. We must give credit to General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni for being even to discuss this. This is freedom. This is freedom. No, it's not about a favor. There is a time in this country when you could not go and talk certain things.
That was under Amin
on radio. Yeah, but it's still part of our society.
No, it was not under Obote.
Amin was still part of our society.
Yeah, so that was a military.
And
rule.
Today there are still people who believe that Amin was good. Are you aware?
This is not a military rule.
Are you aware that there are people who believe that Amin was good?
I'm told, Honorable Stephen, it's time for us to take a break. Just maybe you wind up in 30 seconds and then
in short, let us appreciate how far we have come as a country in terms of governance.
Thank you. So we will take a break and then we will return and open our studio lines 0393933933, 0393262933, 0393262934, 0393266933, 0701933934. You could also reach us on 0751933900. That's after the break. Welcome back from the break. It is 10:47 and the studio lines are now open. I think we have a caller. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
May I know who I'm talking to?
I'm speaking to Emma from Mango.
Yes, Emma. Your contributions.
Now, I really want to express my disappointment with some of the politicians in this country. Because when you really look at the facts, I'm hearing people talking about the UPDF amendment bills, and I think their point of view and their point of argument is on political basis. One, they have not carried out any consultation with the citizens to find out whether this law is good or bad to them. But people are really saying the citizens are not happy. Personally, I am a victim of some of the armed men. Somebody who is carrying a gun, and that person, you want to regard that person as a civilian. I think that is not something right. We really have to look at the facts and debate based on the truth, because some of us are threatened by these armed civilians. Somebody who is threatening to kill you, who has killed people, robbery, and you really regard that as a civilian. I think that is not right. So,
well, thank you, Emma. Hello? Hello? I think we've lost that.
Hello?
Call. Yes, hello, good morning.
Hello?
Yes. Hello, I can't hear you clearly. Your connection. May I know who I'm talking to, please? No. The connection is bad. You just try again. Hello?
Yes, good morning, Stephen.
Good morning. May I know who I'm talking to?
James from Chiraka here.
Yes, James. Kindly proceed.
Thank you for this. I think the biggest mistake we made as a country was to roll our bus roll off for the legislatures of the country. Knowing that a senior six dropout is going to reason for this country is a very big disappointment. For example, the one we have in the studio.
Hello?
This is Moses from Kira.
Moses?
From Kira.
Yes, please, Moses. Kindly proceed.
You know, this issue, these people, they're arguing for nothing. One of it that, according to me, the issue concerning gun, how can you use someone, the civilian, and the having a gun, and you say that that person is a civilian? And this is the same problem which are happening in the neighboring countries like Congo. Civilians are having guns, and they're the ones where the government is really their vulnerable because they're doing things, they're harming other people. So if government has come with the decision of saying that as a civilian must not have an arm, something like a gun or other uniform.
Okay. Yes, hello? Good morning.
I'm talking about East African democracy. I'm feeling that
We can't hear you. Okay. Yes, hello?
Yes, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Who am I talking to?
You're talking to Eric from Red.
Yes, Eric. Kindly proceed.
I don't agree with UPDF. You cannot tie civilians in the military court. What's wrong with taking civilians to the civil court? I can cite an example like somebody can be, somebody can say you possess a gun and you are arrested. Yes, in the actual sense, it is not true. So it is better you take that person to the civil court rather than taking that person to a military court. So I don't agree with that.
We'll stop here because we are clearly running out of time. We've had quite a number of calls, and we thank you all. I'll just allow you to pick to react randomly or respond to any of the issues that have come through. Let me start with you, Professor.
Well, you see, I hear two guys saying somebody with a gun is not a civilian, and they're speaking English. If only they could go and check the dictionary definition of a civilian, then they would probably not say what they say. But I know they are people paid to propagate positions. That particular argument is very sad, because this law is now being enacted not because there has been escalation in gun violence, unless I'm not aware. In Karamoja, even the guys who come to steal cattle from our place, they will hold guns, but very few people are killed the way they used to be killed when government took action in removing guns. Secondly, this law, let us not pretend, because our brother here, who said there was a brief by the president and they got to understand, made it clear.
3 times.
Made it clear that there are people who are now even doing parade like their government. I think they are talking about Noob. But the bigger threat that Noob has is not those military parades. The bigger threat is that Noob has taken over Buganda. Noob has virtually taken over Busoga, and Noob has taken over the youth because they find the expressions that is not in other frameworks of their difficulties and their desires. So if you are going to think you can deal with Noob with guns, you are wasting your time.
Thank you, Professor. We have just very few minutes to...
Thank you very much. What I first appreciate Emma and the rest who understood that unarmed civilian should not be just dealt ordinarily.
No, they said that they are not civilians.
Yeah, those are not civilians, those are militants. And then there is a fear that somebody from Luero brought, Eric. He feels that there is a fear that somebody can say, for example, falsely accuse you or impose a military equipment on you.
The last campaign they did.
It has happened before.
I just wanted to say that this is not.
Can
I finish?
Please.
This is not unique. It is not too unique because it has been happening even in, for example, these police dogs. You know, police dogs have sometimes even gone to somebody who didn't actually steal. You get it? So it is not something unique. These are just some minor aspects of it. It is not a routine that the government will always. Let's say trust the government that we have already elected. Millions of Ugandans elected this government and put this government in power. Let us trust them to be our guardians.
Sarah?
Well, some of the callers, I think, of course, one talked about the issue of consultation, lack of consultation, and that's what I want to capitalize on. You know, the manner in which this law was passed. It was worse than even the COVID regulations that was an emergency. The clerk calls for a memoranda before the bill is tabled. The bill is tabled at 4. The advert came out at 6 in the morning. Then he gives the public one day to a memoranda for the viewers out there. Is a technical analysis. Then people had one day. To make matters worse, even those who submitted, like CCJ and Chapter and the Parliament Watch and others, they were not even given time
To scrutinize the bill.
to appear before the committee. So what was government rushing with? What was the emergency? That this was really enacted like under Emergency Powers Act. Yes. Really, this parliament is the biggest embarrassment that Uganda has ever seen.
And I'll give you 30 seconds to give us your parting shots and we move this way. Sarah, starting with you again. Just your conclusion.
Yeah, you know, again I will talk about parliament. Why do I want to talk about parliament? The duties of parliament are clear under Article 79. Make laws for the governance, law, order and development of the country. Protect the constitution and promote constitutional governance. The other functions are subsidiary in the conduct of protection of the constitution. But if you were to score this parliament, even to give it 10%, you would be lenient mark.
There's something that I'd forgotten. Let me use this as mine. Actually, in Karamoja, we have right now over 3,000 Karachunas in jail, armed warriors. Because Karachunas are called warriors in English. They're in jail. So I needed to give this information to Professor that these Karamojongs, 3,000, that is a brigade strength.
Mm-hmm.
So this law has been passed democratically without floating. If there is a clear floating of rules or laws, then whoever is offended can go and seek redress elsewhere. But what I know, NRM means well for the citizens.
Thank you, Honorable Polot. Yes, Professor, your final remarks.
Well, I can never give up on Uganda because I have only one country, Uganda. So I can assure every listener that Latigo will do whatever it takes to let people understand that this country can be better if we work to govern it collectively in good faith, and if we stop this demonization of people with different views, if we stop the abuse of parliament that has happened. I was on Salt TV yesterday, and my last word was simple. You voters out there, every single person who voted for this bill, just work on them. throw them out.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable. Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of VPN. We've been talking about the state of democracy in East Africa with Dr. Sarah Birete, Professor Maurice Oganyala Tigo, and Honorable Polot Simon Peter. Thank you very much to all of you who've tuned in and those of you who've called us. We do appreciate you for your time and input. VPN returns next Saturday. You join us then. Have yourselves a nice weekend.